keen to know your opinions on winners and losers.
I've never known the banks to lose any time. No, officially.
Welcome to another episode of the Unicorns Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Kelly. Today, we're examining one of the biggest issues facing Australian small businesses, the Reserve Bank's proposal to ban credit card payment surcharges. To break down what it means on the ground, I'm joined by two leaders at the centre of the debate. Stephen Ferguson, CEO of the Australian Hotels Association, represents pubs and hospitality venues already dealing with higher costs, labour shortages and tight margins. He explains why removing surcharges would hit venues hard at the point of every transaction. Dean Long, CEO of the Australian Travel Industry Association, speaks for travel agencies and tour operators still rebuilding after the pandemic. He outlines why the proposal is seen in his sector as a blunt fix that could push small operators to the brink. Together, Stephen and Dean unpack the real cost pressures behind card payments, why absorbing fees is not sustainable, and how the proposal could backfire on both businesses and consumers. So let's get into it. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. To begin, can you both tell us about the industry and the members you represent?
Sure. So, National CEO of the Australian Hotels Association. We've got pretty well, we think, nearly every pub in the country as members. That's about 5,000 pubs, and we've got about another 1,000 accommodation hotels. So all the big places that you stay, the Hiltons, Hyatts and Marriotts are all our members. We're everywhere from the CBDs to the far-flung corners of the Northern Territory. We employ about 300,000 people. 65% of the businesses are family-owned, and we're in every town, every place, along with the post office and the pharmacy, and used to be banks.
And Dean?
Yeah, CEO of the Australian Travel Industry Association. We've got around about 2,000 locations across the country, primarily travel agencies, tour operators and wholesalers. But we primarily sell international travel experiences, getting Australians to visit the world and see what's around, and quite a significant domestic corporate operation where we support really the majority of corporate travellers travelling between Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne and every other capital city.
And if you combine COVID, inflation, cost of living, both of your industries have been impacted over the past 5 years. Can you paint us a picture of the challenges that your members have faced and are now navigating through as we head into 2026?
Look, workforce for us is the biggest issue coming out of COVID. The Prime Minister at the time, Scott Morrison, told all migrant workers to go home. We warned at the time that we'd be in a global race for skills and skilled and unskilled labour, and that's exactly as it turned out. So when we came out of COVID, we were competing with countries like Canada, the US, UK, Europe, for the type of workers that we need, which are people like chefs, hotel managers, housekeepers. So we finally got them back. Our business was tremendously resilient, was one of the first sectors to rebound once we got all our staff back in place. At the moment, what we're seeing is that revenue is holding up, but the costs are driving from the ground bottom. I was talking to a bank the other day, and they said in the last 3 years they've seen in our sector that costs have risen 39%, but revenue's only risen 33%. So that sort of that pressure there between the upward pressure on profitability is still there.
And Dean, I can only imagine the headwinds that your industry has faced since COVID.
Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say that the hotel industry did an amazing job in keeping people safe, bringing people safely back in there. It's a testament to Fergus's members that they were able to do that. For us, we had an environment where we went from having a vibrant industry to having none. Overnight, we went from being a $69 billion industry just in outbound travel alone to being zero, and in most instances in reverse. So coming out of that, we've rebounded really well, which is great, but our margins have never been tighter, and that's primarily because we've got one of the most consolidated aviation markets in the world. You've got two major businesses in this country that control all aviation domestically. You've got 4 commercial deals that control 50% of everybody that comes and goes from this country. There's really, outside of Canada, there's not another country that has a less competitive aviation marketplace than what we've got. So that's our biggest headwind. Staffing, absolutely. That battle for talent is real across any services industry. It's absolutely real. But for us, and for those people listening, if we want to see cheaper airfares, we want to see more people travelling to regional Australia, more people travelling to North America or to Europe, the key to that is aviation and getting more competition in there.
Stephen, if I can come to you, at face value, a ban on surcharges seems like a good idea for customers, but I think the devil is in the detail. Can you give us a brief history of the proposed ban and outline the biggest issues that you've flagged that show how it will actually hurt small hospitality businesses and consumers?
Thanks, Justin. Look, about last year, the Prime Minister and the Treasurer said that they wanted to ban surcharging on debit cards as distinct from credit cards, but also on the proviso that safeguards could be put in place to make sure that business and consumers did not have to wear unnecessary costs. We've adopted a pragmatic view to understand that people are a bit sick of debit surcharges. They buy their coffee in the morning and they get 8 cents whacked on, and we understand that we're pushing against the tide with people who are frustrated at this cost. You talk to any of your friends and they don't like it. So politically, we think that that's where all the Parliament has to go. It doesn't matter whether you're left or right, that there will be a desire to at least ban debit card surcharging. What's happened, though, at the same time is the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia, was running a review on surcharging, and their early decision was to put credit card ban on credit card surcharges into the mix. So they went a step further than what the Prime Minister and the Treasurer said to include credit card charging. Now, on the surface, that makes sense. Why not get rid of all surcharging? In layman's terms, a simple issue is that to process a debit card transaction costs about 0.5%. To process a credit card transaction costs about 1.5% or 3 times. If it's Amex, it's up to 5 times the cost. Why is that so? Very, very simply, it's because of 2 things. Debit is using your own money and it comes very cheaply. Processing a credit card transaction is more expensive for a couple of key reasons. One is there's a cost of borrowing, so the banks have to factor in that someone's going to have that money out of their account for 45 days or 60 days interest-free. And then there's frequent flyer points, airline lounge passes and free international travel insurance that get added to the benefit of having a credit transaction. And quite simply, what we're saying now to the government and the RBA is, we'll wear the cost of debit transaction. People using their own money just like cash, we get it. The punters want to get there. We can absorb that cost. We can work to get that cost down. But we're saying that small businesses or any business and other consumers using debit and cash should not have to cross-subsidise people using credit cards so that they can get frequent flyer points and borrow the money for 45 days.
So the AHA noted in its submission that the ban would leave surcharging businesses out of pocket by more than $1 billion. So for the average pub or cafe, which already operates, I think we've agreed on tight margins, what would a loss of this size mean for the average business's ability to keep operating and employ staff?
Well, if you think of a sort of a mid-sized country pub or a mid-sized city pub that turns over $5 million a year, that 1% is about $50,000. If they're probably, the bigger they are, they can probably get a better rate. They might be lucky if they're lucky down about sort of 0.3%, so about $30,000. So what the RBA is expecting to happen then is for that money, that cost to now be absorbed by the business. Now, if it is, what they can either wear the cost themselves or they can pass it on. They're nearly certain to pass it on. Nearly every small business will pass it on. So really, all it does is just cover the problem. But $50,000, it's not a sum that you can sneeze at.
So cash and debit card users under this proposal will be forced to subsidise those using expensive reward credit cards. Can you elaborate on this concept and how it creates an across-the-board cost of living increase for all Australians?
Well, simply that cost has to get passed on. So where someone's now paying, say, $5.08 on a coffee, that'll be a coffee that's 1.5% that's being surcharged at the moment. That cost has to get passed on. Now, there's another issue here which is around blended pricing. So what consumers will see when they go to the pub or the cafe or the hotel, they'll see a rate of, might say 1.1% or 1.5%. The real cost of processing a debit transaction, I said, is 0.5%. The cost of processing a credit card transaction is 1.5% to 2.5%. So already today, people are underwriting, the debit users are subsidising the cost of credit. Once we have to wear that surcharge, cash users will also have to there won't be two prices in the market. So, Bob Catter, who likes using his cash, he's going to have to pay $5.10, for his coffee, or $10.10 for his beer. So that cost will get passed on. One of the problems with this is trying to explain it to people, because when you look at this payments infrastructure, it's full of wonderful terms like issuer, acquirer. This is how the banks talk. The issuer,
no one knows what they're
the
talking
acquirer,
about.
Interchange fees and scheme fees, and people's eyes roll around the back of their head. And to make it really simple to the listeners, to the viewers, when you hand over $5 in cash or $10 for your beer, it's 1-to-1. The purchaser hands the business the money. When you use a card, there's up to 5 people involved, or 5 entities involved. There's me that buys it, the person I'm buying it from, my bank, their bank, and probably another company that's provided the terminal. Each one of those has to clip the ticket. And that's one of the other issues that we're talking about with the payment providers and the banks is how do we get that cost down, and we get back to what the Prime Minister and the Treasurer said, ensuring there's safeguards to keep costs down for people, because at the moment you've got about $6 billion, I think, washing around the system. No one understands how it works. There's three entities with their snout in the trough clipping the tickets on the way through, and we're trying to get our heads around it and say, okay, guys, what's the simplest and the fairest way we can do this? And we think at the moment it's a couple of things. Accepting the ban on debit, saying that if you want to use your credit card, you should have to pay that 1.5% or 2.5%, and keep all your frequent flyer points. But one of the other critical issues is this blended rate, where at the moment, instead of you being charged 0.5% if you're using a debit card and 1.5% if you're using your credit card, they blend that together. We're saying that should be what's called dynamic least cost routing, where the machine goes, this is a cheap card, send it down the 0.5% route. This is an Amex, goes down the 2.5% route.
Do they have the tech to be able to do that?
Yes, they do. They tell you they don't, but they do. There's companies out there that do. Quite interestingly, the payment providers say, but we need to, one of the reasons the fees are so high is because they need to innovate. And we go, okay, well, how about you innovate in the area of making sure you can all do dynamic least cost routing? And they go, no, we can't do that.
That's not the innovation we're talking about.
That's not the innovation we want. The innovation they want is to grow their $6 billion pot to $8 billion. So.
And I think also, just on Ferguson's point there, 2 of those companies were in US Congress just in the middle of the year, and they had to tell Congress how much they made. Their net profit is 50%.
Yeah.
So they're making 50%. And what we're seeing in these proposals that have been put forward by the RBA and the government is to say, you know what, let's not ask those people that have 50% margin going back to their owners in profit. Let's get the small business owner, or even Australian large businesses in hotels or travel agents, tour operators, to go, you know what, guys, you wear it. An Australian consumer, let's not put the pressure on the companies that actually have the margin and actually have the ability to innovate. Let's not pressure them. Let's actually just take what they want and apply it as public policy. So I think what we're really finding here is, and we've seen it in the pushback to March, the RBA said, perhaps we've got it wrong, perhaps we need to have a bit of a rethink. And I think that's what the business community's done really well, is that we know ultimately there's $1, there's $1 that we're chasing, and it's the Australian consumer that's got that. And people go, we'll get rid of surcharging, there won't be a price increase. Well, it means a price increase for everybody. And in some instances, if you're not buying direct from someone, you'll have a double price increase, because the supplier will have to increase their overall price that they're charging or distributing out to a travel agent, and the travel agent has to increase their price. And I don't know, with inflation running at 3.8%, why the RBA would be even considering inflationary policy like they've put out, this really demonstrates a bit of a disconnect. So hopefully the RBA can listen. They've got a good time to learn and maybe push back on those companies that are making 50% net profits.
Dean, some have referred to this RBA proposal as a sledgehammer solution. So in your industry, what is the biggest, most irreversible impact that it could have on the travel industry?
Look, for us, it's probably going to be the difference between accepting credit payments or not. Because, look, fundamentally, the business community is in absolute alignment. We've read, we've spoken to the Treasurer, the PM's made it very, very clear. It's not fair at the moment where you've got low-cost routing for debit cards, which costs a few cents or 0.5%, depending on how you're going. We can absorb that. We can work with that. We know that the younger generation don't like credit cards. And they're not using credit cards. Credit cards are dropping off.
Yes. Yeah.
So in this proposal, we're effectively asking young people of Australia who can't afford their house to pay more for their products, to get boomers to get their free travel insurance, their free points, to get their upgrades to business and first class. That we just don't think that's fair. So for us, it'll be, look, do we actually accept credit cards going forward? Do we accept those things? All of those great consumer protections that you get with chargeback rights, by the way, merchants have to fund that too. All those things that you get for free as a card holder will cease to be in existence for our industry. If I look at our larger members, our Flight Centre is the largest travel agency in the world that does leisure. Yes. They turned over nearly $27 billion last year, and they made $200 million.
So if you're booking a trip and you would normally use your credit card, what does that mean? It's like, okay, debit card, or you just don't go on the trip.
Well, you're going to have to pay an EFT, which means you'll have more chances of getting things wrong when you're typing in what's a BSP, what's an account number, what's the pay ID, all these things that the payment companies have all thrown out to add more confusion, to make it more challenging. Those things are going to happen. But it will mean less places accepting a credit card. And if you can't accept a credit card or a debit card, it's going to be harder to pay people. That's one of the benefits. And it was why the RBA decided, for almost as long as I can remember, that surcharging is a good thing. It allows people to pay for how they want to pay. And we shouldn't be subsidising people's payment choice through elevated prices. It's a really bad policy. And we all know once surcharging disappears, none of the companies that are making 50% profit or more are going to just sit back and go, I can't wait to see my margin erode. They're going to take the opportunity to keep pushing it. So transparency in surcharging gives people choice. If I don't want to surcharge, I'll pay in cash. Or I don't want to pay that, that's fine. I'll pay in cash. I'll pay an EFT. But if you want to get your points, you want to get your travel insurance, you want to get all the 45 days credit, pay for it. Don't expect a small business in Australia to cover that cost for you.
So how is it likely to change the customer experience for travellers if these surcharges go ahead?
Look, I think the problem is if they don't go ahead, we're going to see just less ways that you can manage your money. I think it's great that you can pay for a holiday today, or you go into a hotel and you put it down. You don't have to pay for that until 30 days' time. We know people use credit cards in that way, and that's a good thing. But if you're going to use it, you've got to pay for that privilege. Don't expect the younger generation or those people not getting those privileges. So what will end up happening for people who don't have it, they're going to have to find new ways to do it. It'll be more challenging. They won't get to manage their cash flow. Their mortgages will go up because they'll have less money sitting on their offset. There's a whole range of flow and implications here that haven't been thought of by the RBA.
So why do you think, and a question to both of you, the RBA, the government as well, came up with this idea? What was the rationale behind it? And do you think they're having second thoughts going, actually, we didn't quite think about it?
Well, I think it's fair. I think it's really fair to say no one likes surcharge.
Yeah.
So let's be really, there's nothing more annoying than, I don't drink coffee, so I'll apply it to my hot chocolate. It's $3.50. They have it on the board at $3.50, and all of a sudden it comes down at $3.60. That's annoying. If I look at the number one issue that was in the financials inquiry that we had, I think it was 3 years ago, now it's sort of all blending into one, the number one item people complained about was a surcharge. Credit card surcharging. It was number one by a country mile. So no one likes it. But just because people don't like it doesn't mean the policy needs to be changed. It shouldn't be outlawed, because all that means is prices are going to be going up, and that's what people want. But that's why as a community, as a business community, we said, look, let's remove surcharging from debit. Let's give people more surcharge-free options. We're all for that. But let's not say to younger people in Australia, oh, you know what, can you keep subsidising the points of your parents and your grandparents and their free travel insurance and their free 45 days? Let's not have that cross-subsidisation. Let's let them keep using their debit card. But no one likes it. We get that. But also, it's a really fair way for people to pay their fair share.
It's interesting. I was going to say that when you hand over cash, I buy a beer off someone, hand the cash over, they've got that money. Now, if you're going to use a card and you're banking at the Randwick branch of whatever, and you're buying a beer in St Kilda, someone's got to get the money from Randwick to St Kilda. So that's got to come at a cost, right? At the moment, the business passes that cost on to the consumer. Prices will go up. The consumer will end up paying, but it does come at a cost. And we're also seeing on the other side the government wanting to issue a cash mandate, saying that businesses that want to go cash free also being told no, you've got to have a float every day and wear the cost of that. So this whole payment system is it is causing headaches.
And it's just going to raise the prices. I mean, we've only got one provider of cash in this country, and they ran out of money just last year. So the idea that and I think it's fair to say we all agree the payment ecosystem isn't working as well for the consumers or businesses that we'd like. But there doesn't appear to be an overarching strategy to say we're going to have a vibrant cash community and a vibrant tap and go or credit card debit environment.
The other thing I'd say too, at the moment there's sunlight on this issue, and people are starting just to come around to go, okay, hang on, I didn't know this. I didn't realise I was, my cash is going to subsidise credit, or my debit was going to subsidise someone's, frequent flyer points. So at the moment we've got the sunlight on it. So we really need to make sure in this period between now and when the RBA comes out to increase the awareness of the community, because people don't understand. It is mind-boggling, this whole system. But once they start to understand that, well, then it should be harder for the RBA to go, oh no, we'll just cover this all up, because that's all it does. It just covers the problem up. So there's a real opportunity now to get that message across.
And have there been international examples where surcharge bans have come into effect, and what have the results been?
Prices have gone up.
So it didn't work?
No. And in fact, the interchange fees, one of those things I talk about that no one understands, those costs went up. The internal sort of back-of-house hidden costs increased, because once again, there's no sunlight on them. Once it gets covered up, the only people to be aware of it will be small business. So instead of business and consumers exercising their voice, it'll only be business. And we know that it's not businesses that win elections, it's consumers. So the politicians will listen whilst we've got the consumers' attention.
So as you both sit back and look at the proposal as it stands now, notwithstanding the fact that the RBA will make its announcement in March, who are the winners and who are the losers in all of this? And it might be different groups, different answers, but I'd be keen to know your opinions on winners and losers.
I've never known the banks to lose any time. No offence to the good people that I bank with.
They're very good winners.
It's really interesting when you look at the banks, right? Years and years ago, you used to go to the bank with your I had a passbook, Dean. You're too young for that, and you used to get cash out, and so everything they had was a cost item. Now they've been successful in transferring everything to being to a revenue item. So now when I buy a coffee, years ago when I bought a coffee, they didn't get money out of it. Now when I buy a cup of coffee, the banks and the payment providers get an earn out of it. So what genius sort of system is that? So they'll win. Visa and MasterCard never lose. They made, I think it was $50 billion profit each. Yep. Credit card users, on what Michelle Bullock wants to do today, they'll win. And the worst off of the whole equation will be the cash users, because no matter what happens, they're going to have to pay. The 20% of people that use cash, they're going to have to pay more, and they're not getting any benefit for it. Next worst will be the debit card users. They're getting a bit of a benefit because the money's going down the trail. But those two groups, which make up 80% of the transactions, will be looking after the rich people at the top end of town, using their black platinum, whatever it is, to fund their trips to Wimbledon or wherever they're going, up the front of the plane.
So, and I think it's easy for those listeners and viewers today to go, cash. I don't carry cash any around. It's also electronic transfer. Let's be really clear. If you're transferring money to your electrician, you're transferring money to a travel agency or to a hotel, you're going to pay more. So just because you haven't got a note or a coin in your wallet, I also haven't carried coins around for a while. They're a bit bloody heavy. But
I carry cash for when the
terminals drop out.
When the terminals drop out.
But all those people are going to pay more.
But a lot of venues now are cash free, aren't they?
Well, whilst there's not a cash mandate, so when the cash mandate comes in, depending whether they hit a certain threshold, they could shift.
And I think also what you're going to see is that even if a venue doesn't accept cash, most people still have a preference to use their card. And so there might be, I sort of view it to some extent to say, well, there's a lot of noise about surcharging and how's it going to work or what's it going to be. At least in if I look at my environment in which we operate, we can tell the difference between a credit and debit card at the point of transaction today to ensure that you only get charged what your card is actually giving you value for. The reverse of it is have an annual fee for the card user that is representative of the benefits that you receive. Because at the moment, it's a completely disproportionate equation. So I think if Australian consumers want to get rid of surcharging, which we all agree feels really annoying, how would you feel about having an annual fee that actually covers your points, that covers your travel insurance, and actually paying for the benefits you receive? In the proposal the business community's put together, it's pretty good, which is if you want to use credit, which has all those things, pay for it. You want to use any other form, don't pay for it. And that's we think it's a really quite a mature and good approach.
Sensible middle ground. It's the middle ground, and I think you'd find support from the banks and you'd find support from the airlines to leave credit out of this sort of brave new world. Those that want to spend, pay more for using credit and get all the benefits, they'll be happy doing that. And then it just leaves, the 80% of consumers using cash and debit to pay as little as possible.
So let's get into the possible pathway forward, the sensible solution. If you were designing this policy, or you've
already finished it.
You've got Albo on the phone, you've got the RBA on the phone, going, all right, well, what is it we can do to make this fairer and better? What is it?
Well, we've gone this great big sort of 180 degrees, I think, where we are now, from where the Prime Minister, very fairly representing the views of most Australians, got up and said, ban debit card surcharging. Like it's off the charts, the number of people that support him.
Yes, of course.
Then we had the Reserve Bank come and go, well, we'll throw credit cards into the mix. So they've sort of gone out here. They've overreached. And what needs to happen now is quite simply is the RBA just to come back and say the Prime Minister was right the first time.
Yep.
Simple as that. Ban debit, leave credit out there. Those that want to spend money, those that want to pay more to use a credit card, knock yourselves out. Those that are trying to manage their costs should not have to be subsidising those that want to get money for, borrow money that costs money. Like people go 45 days interest free. Like if you've got $1,000 sort of progressively on your credit card, that $1,000 sitting there for 45 days doesn't come at no cost. The bank has to pay someone interest for that money. So it's not just frequent fly points. It's this whole interest free period as well. So if you want to use your credit card, pay for it, but you shouldn't expect the business and the debit user, people who are sensibly trying to keep their costs down, to pay for your excesses.
And do you think Canberra, since announcing the policy and then the RBA saying, well, let's do this as well, do you think they're now listening to the voices of concerned industry about maybe we might need to have a look at this again?
Well, as I say again, I think the Prime Minister and the Treasurer are very sensible people, and where they started from is probably where the RBA needs to come back to, because that was the sensible solution at the time, and it still is the sensible solution today.
Well, gentlemen, we wish you well in the campaign. Dean and Stephen, thank you so much for coming
Justin.
in, and let's wait until next March to see what happens, but all the best and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us on.